Welcome, Pastor Wayne Krause. I'm glad you could join me today.
It's a privilege. Great to be
Today,
here.
we're going to talk about church planting and
Yes.
getting the gospel into city areas.
Yes.
You're an expert in that space. We're really looking forward to learning and being inspired from you today. First question for you, though, is this. Why should we plant churches?
Historically, Christianity has always been into church planting. Not one church mentioned in the Bible exists today. We don't have Ephesus. We don't have Antioch. We just thank the good Lord they planted churches. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. So one of the reasons we plant churches is to continue the growth of the Christian church. If we just relied on existing churches, they often get to the stage where they plateau, they stagnate, and eventually decline, as happened in Scripture and in most Christian churches today. So why do we plant churches? I think it is the most effective way to reach new people.
And we were talking a little bit earlier where it's easy sometimes to think about church planting being some sort of extraordinary, or we were talking about extreme sport. You know, it's something that really rare and it's really quite unusual to do. But the impression I get from you is church planting is just part of the normal cycle of doing church, being church.
Yeah, I think so, because as you grow, as you make disciples, you have to have somewhere to have them come together in community. We call that church. So if you're making disciples, you are going to have to eventually plant churches. Now, you can plant churches without making disciples, but you can't make disciples without planting churches. Just can't happen.
So, Wayne, one of the benefits, of course, of planting a new church is reaching people in a new area to build relationships, build community with people who may not have had a chance to go to church before.
Yes.
But one of the things we were talking about again earlier was that if you're planting a new church, you need people with their spiritual gifts to serve God in new ways. And sometimes it's easy to be a passenger in your current church. Maybe, you know, you want to serve the Lord, but there's people in certain roles already and there's not a need for you to serve. But a new church plant can give new people that opportunity to serve. Can you just expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, the research is very clear. Church plants encourage leadership development because you have to develop new leaders. It revitalizes an existing church because as people go to help plant a church, fresh blood has to come up through the existing church to fill those roles that have been vacated. So it helps a new church, but it actually revitalizes an existing church. As you said, my spiritual gifts, I may not have been able to use them. The elders may have been in their job for a while. How do I get into leadership without being pushy? And I don't want to do that. So church planting offers an opportunity for some established leaders to go, with new leaders going as well, to be apprenticed in the new church plant, but it also helps create opportunity in the existing church. Yeah, you also mentioned we plant churches in new areas. So geographically, we can say here is a growth area. We need to plant a church here to reach the people who are going into that area. That's geographic, but we also have demographic, so people groups. How do we reach this people group or that people group? Because new church plants attract a new demographic. Okay, we're not just planting from mine and it's going to be identical to that, because the people we're reaching could be different, particularly if we're strategic. We can say there is a large Muslim group in this area. There's a large immigrant group of someone else, or just people moving into this area for work, but there's no church presence. Strategic church planting is, I think, essential.
So let's say someone feels impressed.
Yep.
Their church is flourishing.
Yes.
It's healthy, lots of people there.
Yeah.
But they feel that the Lord's touching their heart to reach a new demographic, a new geography, whatever it might be. What's the process that they need to go through?
If you can get out of church planting, get out of it, okay? Because you are at the front line, okay? So my number one suggestion, if you're feeling something moving inside you that says, I think I should be planting a church or being involved in a church planting group, I may not be the leader, first thing you have to do is pray. You really have to make sure the Lord is leading you in this direction. If you don't pray, if you don't have an active spiritual life, then the devil will get you. So it is essential. That's number one. I'd then be talking to other individuals to say, hey, I'm thinking of this. I feel impressed. What do you think? So your prayer life, your spiritual life, the consulting with friends, I would talk with the pastor of your existing church. Hey, what do you think about this? Is the church thinking about doing this? Is what have you? They're the first steps.
Sure.
We then talk about building a team.
Okay.
You don't go, hey, what type of church would you like to be a part of? Because they're part of a church. But you talk about what type of church could we have that our non-Christian friends, our post-Christian friends might come to. And so they become a consultant for you. And so your friends are strategizing, oh, yeah, if we had this type of church, I could invite this friend along. So to me, that's one of the best ways to do it, about forming a small group that catches a vision, and that vision has to be, who are we want to reach? Then it's how are we going to reach them and where. That'd be step. But the motivation for church planting has to be mission. It can't be ego. It can't be, I don't like the worship here in this church. I don't like the pastor. The worst type of church plants are ones that result as a fight. And I had a fight with our church board. So, hey, because of mission, I want to plant a church. Nah, that rarely works. If you're an angry person, wherever you go, that's where you'll be. And then if you're within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I would then be talking with the conference and say, how does this fit within your strategic plan? So there's some simple steps. There are, in the conferences and where I work, help available for people who want to plant churches, and we would come alongside them and coach them and help them if they're interested.
And when we're thinking about church planting, like in my mind, often a church is, this building that fits 100 people, 200 people. But of course, church planting can come in different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Can you share some examples of what a church plant might look like?
Well, yeah, there is no one right type of church plant. There's a community church plant where you're going into a community and you may rent a hall and you're going to be running and being involved in the community. That way, there's house churches. We are not going to reach the cities unless we do house churches, because we do not have, no one has the money these days to buy buildings in cities that are going to fit a significant number of people. And remember, the early Christian church for the first 200-300 years did not have any buildings. They were all church plants. Most of the New Testament was written to church plants. Letters from Paul to church plants. None of those letters were written to buildings, were churches and buildings. So in the Bible, when it says church, it always talks about people. So whether you meet under a tree, in a home, in a cathedral, in a school, doesn't matter. They can all be church plants.
And one of the things you were saying a little bit earlier was about being strategic.
Yes.
And, sometimes I worry about churches being relevant to their community, being strategic, being present, meeting their community's needs, not a club for the converted, but how can we be relevant? So how can a church be relevant? Whether it's a new plant or an existing church, how do you serve the needs of the community?
I think one of the best things, existing church or a church plant, is to ask the simple question, on any given weekend, why would they want to come to your group? Okay, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. Saturday morning, traditional time to have church, who is my competition? It's not the other church down the road. It's not this. It's any other use of time. Okay, I could what do I want to do Saturday morning? I could go to the beach. I could go to the shops, cafe. I could sleep in. So what's happening at the church that I would want to be there? Okay, that starts the question on being relevant. What is happening in that community that people will want to come to and be part of? So that's the issue of relevance. Is what is talked about there going to be useful to me during my week? Is it going to answer questions that I've got in my heart? Is there real community there? We're craving community.
Yeah.
We're craving relationships. So the issue of relevance to me comes down to community, and is what is happening there going to impact a person's life? You start with those questions, right?
Great.
If I'm going into a new area, I don't do door-to-door surveys. Okay, some people do that. The door-to-door survey is, what are the needs of your community? And I never mention my needs. I talk about the guy next door whose kids are ratty, so we need a parenting seminar, right?
Sure.
I go to schools. I go to the council, the local federal member or state member, the police, and I ask them and other charities or groups that are working in the area to find out what the needs of that community are, and then go, okay, where are the gaps that our group could help with? Or can we join other groups? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. A real key to this, Tim, is when we impact the community, we don't work for the community. We work with the community. Okay. So if you're wanting to build community yourself, you reach people you're working with better than those you're working for.
Sure.
Okay. You think about that a bit. If you're doing a food soup kitchen or something, if you have people from the community actually helping you serve the food, you actually reach them better than the ones you're actually giving the food to.
Great. And can you share some ideas? And you mentioned, food banks and that sort of service, but generally, can you share a little story of a church plant that's doing it right, that's going well, that's God's blessing it?
Oh, the first church I was part of, first church plant I was part of, we saw a local school and Sanitarium Health Food Company and the Red Cross were wanting to do a breakfast club there. It was a lower socioeconomic school, and so we were asked if we would like to help. And so we went into that school and we made an agreement with them that we would do breakfast club there 5 days a week, but we'd only do it if there were people from some of the parents and some of the staff helping out. Right.
So that's doing church with people.
Doing church with people. So, for years, this church plant was doing that. And then eventually the school, we helped in other areas as well. We kind of helped with when there was some community thing that they wanted to do and they needed some financial help. We would help the school that way. Eventually the principal contacted me and said, could your church provide us a chaplain? And I said, have you talked to the other teachers about this? Have you talked to the parents about this? And he said, yep. And they said, if it's from that church, yes. Any other church, no. Why? Because we were seen as working with rather than for.
Interesting. Yeah, that's great. And we were talking a little bit earlier about one of the challenges might be reaching certain groups of people.
Yep.
And particularly one of the strategic needs, from what I understand, is to reach people in the cities.
Yeah. Yes.
What are some of the challenges of reaching people in city areas?
Oh, there's a lot of challenges. Ellen White, one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, said, the work in our cities is the work of our time, the essential work of our time. She wrote that in 1910 when New York City was smaller than Sydney is today. So she's saying the work in our cities is the essential work. It is also the hardest. it is the mission field in the South Pacific are our cities, okay?
And why is that? Is it because there's more people, or the challenges and the needs of the city people are different to?
People are moving into the cities at an accelerated rate. So that's where the people are going. Now, why are they going into the cities? There's employment, there's culture. Society has always said if you reach the cities, you change the culture. Okay? Why is it a challenge? Because everyone's flat out. They're busy. Building relationships is so hard in the cities. Secular post-Christians, that's where they are. They're in the cities. And when I talk about secular post-Christians, I mean they have no real interest in the Bible. Okay? They don't know what the Bible is. Australia has the second lowest regard for religion in the world behind the Belgians.
Wow.
Okay? We don't like religion. It's said that England sent their religious nuts to America and their criminals to Australia, and Australia got the better deal. Okay, the first chaplain didn't come to Australia at the first fleet. It was 5 years later that Wilberforce and Sir Isaac Newton were involved in saying, you need to get a chaplain to Australia.
Okay.
Right? And finally he came and he said, can we build a church? And they said, no. So another 5 years, he built a church himself. And mysteriously, it burnt down soon after. So our kind of attitude to religion and Christianity, above all, it used to be the Minority Report that Christianity was bad. Now it's the Majority Report. Christianity now makes up 44% of the Australian population. We are now a minority. Now, in the cities, you just magnify all of this. So that's our challenge.
So how do you overcome that challenge? You know, if you're wanting to reach people who are not interested in Jesus, busy people like you said, and I know cities are sometimes a little bit less friendly, that you're walking down the street, you're not really engaging with other people.
It's also the height of culture and entertainment, so people are going there for fun as well.
Sure.
But yeah, you're right. We have to act, I believe, we have to act that we are in the minority, not with the arrogance. I think in America, they still regard themselves as the majority Christians. So I believe that they still are trying to bring about morality by laws and legislation, and we will vote the right person in because of that. In Australia, we are now the minority. Let's act like it. So I believe that the best way to reach secular post-Christians is by persuasion, not argument, to actually build authentic relationships. And this is where it's hard, because we are busy. For us to be willing to slow down, to be able to build authentic relationships, to be willing to move into the cities. You know, some churches kind of think you have to run from the cities, they're evil, we've got to go and live in the country. Again, Ellen White, our founder, one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, a compilation was written, Country Living, and so a lot of Adventists said we got to go to the country. But she actually wrote more about reaching the cities than she did about going to the country. Our challenge is, do we have people willing to move into the cities to build relationships?
And that sounds central then, building relationships. So whether you're someone living in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, or perhaps even in Suva or wherever it is.
Yes. Yeah.
Building relationships with your neighbours.
A traditional way we said to get to know your neighbours. Get to know your neighbours. Well, in the city, you don't actually get to know your neighbours. You have more relationship with the people you work with.
Okay.
So trying to build relationships with the people you work with is actually better than the person who lives in the house next door,
Yeah.
because usually you only see them when they're putting out the rubbish,
Yes.
right? You spend a lot more time with the people you work with. What would it look like to actually build relationships with them outside of work?
Yeah, great opportunity. And I guess outside work too is finding people who share a similar passion or hobby or interest, meeting people at your gym or
Yeah,
dog walking or whatever it might be, I guess.
that's it. If you're a follower of Christ, join those gyms, join those clubs, those things where people, the walking club that's, becoming more and more popular now. I'm on the Central Coast, and it's a big deal up there that people just come together for walking, meet together, and they go to a cafe afterwards after they've had their walk. Well, it's great opportunities.
So is there any final advice? Somebody's watching this video and they're sort of saying, yeah, look, I know God says we've got to go and expand the gospel, reach people in different corners of the world, in the cities, in the country, wherever it is. And, they're feeling that God is speaking to their heart, that they want to be more effective,
Yeah.
but they're not quite ready to make that commitment or that decision. What advice or encouragement can you give to somebody like that?
I like the Gospel Commission where it says, go ye into all the world and make disciples. The actual, original can actually be translated as you are going, make disciples. So God made you you. He didn't make you Billy Graham. He didn't make you anybody else. He expects, as you are going about your normal life, that's where you make disciples, by just being you. You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to be an expert and stuff. But I would encourage you, if you're still thinking about what I can do, is, okay, as I'm going, who are the people I rub shoulders with? Who are the people I can build relationships with? Who can I learn from to share my story? Okay, to be able to listen to my friend's story, see how my story relates to their story, and then introduce them to God's story. Okay, so it's a case of you're not sure, you're not certain. Giving of the Gospel Commission, it says the disciples were there, and they had witnessed his death and resurrection, but some still doubted. So it's okay to have doubts. It's okay to not sure if you're good enough or whatever. But God says he's still with you even in that. You can learn how to share your faith, but talk to God. And in the armor he created for you to live in, make disciples.
Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.